Hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here, your host of the Dr. William Clark podcast. Glad to be with you for another episode. This is going to be a power packed episode because I want to talk about something that is so important to our fundraising journey as nonprofits. And given the situation that we are in with this pandemic still gripping our entire global community, we are in need of indeed some wisdom and strategy as it relates to how do we financially survive? How do we thrive in the midst of an economic downturn shift? The transfer of available resources are going from one place to the next. How do we survive in the midst of a crazy moment? You know, the last time we went through this, I mean, think about this 2011 hit, and we had a heck of a time as a country. Even globally, trying to cross over and survive. Then 2007, 8, 9 hit which was the economic downturn, and here we are in 2020 again. Nonprofits who are doing great work are now faced with figuring out how do we survive and thrive, and how do we perform the services that we have been contracted to do and trusted to do, so that our clients don't feel like we've let them down. And so this podcast, this show, even pre-corona, was shifting towards that, talking about fundraising and financing of our nonprofits because we need the resources to make that happen. Certainly, it's become more important as more and more nonprofits are figuring out how to make this happen. So I want to talk about the psychodynamics of fundraising. And this is going to be an interesting podcast because I want to dig into the world of leadership a bit as it relates to fundraising. And I want to help you think through what it means to establish a psychodynamic approach to fundraising so that you can address your fundraising needs of today, tomorrow, and years from now. So there are four things I'm going to share with you, and I'll do my best to explain them as you go through this podcast with me, or as you go through this web class with me. I want you to leave your notes and comments there because I want to have an ongoing discussion about this. This is going to impact so many people, not only for this moment, but post-corona. Once we figure it out, and once we as a country, as a global community, get through this moment, we're going to need some strong leaders in our nonprofit organizations to help us position our nonprofits to lead us forward and to influence our fundraising. So let's talk about the psychodynamics of fundraising. Here's the first thing I want you to know, and that is you as a fundraiser, as a leader, as an influencer within your organization and within your nonprofit community, you must know your role. Now, your role is one that is filled with responsibility, and you have stuff that must get done. Whether you are the executive director, CEO, vice president, director of something, whatever the case may be, board member, your role has to it's inclusive of responsibility of things that must get done for the nonprofit, and you know your role. You have a job description. You've been doing it for a while. Many of you have been in the business for quite a while, and you know what to do. Now, when I talk about knowing your role, I am not talking about knowing your job description. Your job description is what it is. It's already been established when you took the job and you said, I want to work for this nonprofit organization. But when I talk about knowing your role, I'm talking about something totally different. I'm talking about knowing your role when it comes to fundraising. Here it is. Let's go deeper, right? You There are people who listen to this podcast, and many who have departments that are focused on fundraising and focused on revenue development, etc. And you have people who are specifically designed, who are specifically hired to fundraise. And when I say know your role, I'm not even talking about that, even if that's who you are. Again, we're talking about the psychodynamics of fundraising. There are three roles one plays within any given relationship. So bear with me. Carl Jung, he is a noted therapist, noted researcher, noted influencer in the world of psychology, etc. And I've always pronounced his name wrong. I believe it's Jung. It's spelled Jung. But Carl came up with what we now call the Myers-Briggs model. and he's the grandfather, the godfather that created it. His research established that there are three positions one plays within any given relationship, and you as an individual, you're able to switch between these three positions at any given time because of the dynamic of the relationship you're in. The three roles are: one, the parent role; two, the adult role; and three, the child role. Now, he utilizes these three roles to describe three levels of positions that can exist within a relationship. Let's start with parent. The parent is a creator, the one who used seed and egg to produce the rest of the family. And again, think about these roles in the context of a true family. The parent is the one that lays down the law, the authority, the one who is the guide of the family, the matriarch, the patriarch of the family. The adult can be both a parent and a child, but an adult is an independent, functioning individual within the family unit. If you're fortunate enough to still have your parents alive, no matter how old you are, but if you're over 18, you are a functional or supposed to be a functional adult. And within the context of your family, your parents, mother and father, they play a role in still being mom and dad, parents, right? The creators, the originators, the ones who theoretically supposed to still be giving us wisdom and guidance and giving us insight into what to expect from life. Even though they are mom and dad, we still have a role to play in the family, and we still have a role to play in everyday life. Hence, we are adults. We are independent, yet still subservient to our parents. It's interesting. The older our parents get, we look towards their well-being. And as I've watched my grandparents get older, and I watch other family members get older, and their children who take care of their affairs, they're independent adults, they're grown people. They still submit their will. The child, right, still submits their will. The adult child submits their will to the parent, because the parent still is mom and dad. They have preferences even as they get older, and they have preferences about their care, etc. And so the adult child, from what I've seen, and a good adult child, right, they don't overpower the will of the parent unless it's a life or death situation, but they do their best to make the will of their parents become a reality. Even in that example, as I just described it, an adult, while independent, is still subservient to the parent. I hope you're getting this visual. And then here's a third role. You have the parent, the adult, and you have the child. The child is a dependent individual who is still reliant upon a parent and may be under the auspices of an adult within their family structure. Okay? Imagine this. You have an 18-year-old at home and a 5-year-old. Mom and dad decide to go out on a date. They say, Johnny, I want you to watch your little sister. The little sister, while chiefly under the responsibility of the parent, can be under the leadership or control of the adult brother or sister within a family unit. In the world of business, in the world of fundraising, depending on the context of your relationships, you can be either a parent, adult, or a child at any given time. Even if you're an adult child, you one day, or you may presently be the parent of other children. And as those children become adults, you still remain as the parent. Your children become adult children who are independent, and they at some point produce their own children, and the cycle continues. This exists in the world of business. This exists in the world of fundraising. This exists in all types of contexts where you have people who existed before you came into that infrastructure, and they serve as the parent, the parental structure, the parental folks, the folks with the influence, the folks who are the originators, the creators of what you are now a part of. And you are now a functional member of that as an adult. But every time they walk into a room, every time they say this has to get done this way, you submit. This is a leadership structure. You submit to the authority of the parent. And again, a child is someone who is wholly dependent, still part of the family, but wholly dependent upon the parent, and sometimes, in many cases, submissive to the auspices of the adult. When you're fundraising, particularly when you're fundraising, You have to understand, even though within the context of your nonprofit, you are the parent. You may be the founding director. You may be the board chair. You may be an influential member of your organization. You may be the parent within the context of your nonprofit. But when it comes to fundraising, nonprofit leaders must deal with the fact that they must switch roles because the context of their relationships are now shifting. And when a funder who holds all the cards, who is the influential party in the room with the check, is now entering the space of parent. And you, as the founding director, are now shifting to a role of an adult person who is fully functional in their own right. But given the context of the relationship and the need, you're now shifting to the role of the adult. Position number 2. And in some cases, if you're a new nonprofit, you're shifting to the child because, as we talk about on this podcast, if you're a new nonprofit, you're not in a position to get your own money. So you may be a subcontractor, and you have to be responsive to the responsible adult who is getting the check from the parent, which is the funder. Now, this happens quite a bit. When it comes to the psychodynamics of fundraising, you must know which role you are playing. And it is healthy for you to know which role you're playing, depending upon the relationship. If you miscalculate the relationship you are a part of and you misassess the relationship you are a part of, you could be thinking you are a parent within a relationship when in reality, you're not a parent. You're not even an adult. You probably are the child. You see this a lot when you see new nonprofits request major money, 6-figure money from foundations, and they get rejected, and they don't know why they got rejected. You got rejected because you haven't been around for a while. You haven't had any proof of performance. You haven't had any proof of managing large sums of money, etc. Why would a parent give the keys of their car to a 6-year-old? They haven't had enough experience riding a bike yet, let alone a skateboard. And we're going to give you the keys to a car? I mean, a fully functioning computer on wheels that must be operated with 2 hands and 2 feet, 2 eyeballs, etc. As a child, you must mature over the years to get to the point where you can finally take your permits test, be permitted to drive with an adult in the car, and at some point after proving your capacity to operate a vehicle, take the test and become a full functioning card-carrying licensed driver. It's the same way in fundraising. If you're too new for this, you cannot be trusted with the keys to the car. You can't be trusted with the keys to the house. You must have an accompanying adult or a mature individual in the house, whether it's mom or the designated person. You cannot be left alone. It's the same way in fundraising. This is how funders are looking at you. If you're new, you are the 5-year-old, 6-year-old of the family. If you've been around for a while and you've sustained and you've grown, you're in your teenage years, you're in your late teens, early 20s, you're a full functioning adult, you get trusted with a whole lot more stuff. I mean, think about it. As you become a preteen and teen, you get allowance, you get all these other privileges. You get to hang out with your friends, get to go to parties, you get to go shopping, get to go to the mall after Corona. We got to think after Corona. And you get all these privileges, but then even there's more privileges. Maybe you're a stay-at-home adult. You're staying at home while you're going to college. You're staying home after college, and you just go and come as you please. You function on your own. You function differently, and your parents trust you so much that they're giving you full reign over a lot of things that they used to control themselves. Obviously, you control yourself. You control your own habits. You control your own spending, but now you may be responsible for the well-being of your parents. And a funder that trusts a mature organization says the same thing. Hey, we believe in your work, and we're going to give you a major gift, a multi-year major gift, as a sign of our trust in you. And we have expectations, of course, but we know that you can do it. And here's the evidence. Here's the keys. Here's the number to the safe. Here's our life insurance policy, right? This is what parents do with their older children. Here's all the key information that you need as we get older. And a funder says, hey, as you mature as an organization, we're giving you more and more and more, and we'll recommend others to do the same. You got to know your role. And if you miscalculate this at any point, if you misjudge where you are, if you think you're in a different place when you're really not, you're going to fall flat on your face. And it creates this struggle. It creates this stress. It creates this anxiety about the work you're doing. So you got to know your role. Here's the second thing about the psychodynamics of fundraising. You got to know yourself. Know your role. Know yourself. I'm going to keep this super simple. And this is still part of the Carl Jung ecosystem about introverts and extroverts. Which are you? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Or are you a tweener? Now, you don't hear much talk about tweeners, but I'll throw it in here because there's some people who just say I'm both, depending on the situation. Some people say I'm either or, no matter what the situation is. But know who you are. Know who you are as an organization. Know who you are as a person, as a fundraiser. Know who you are as a board member, as a supporter, as a stakeholder. Do you prefer to stick to yourself and allow limited access to who you are to a limited number of people? Or are you an open door and people can come in and out and you are still confident and secure in who you are and don't have any anxiety associated with letting people come and go? Or do you kind of fall in between? Depends on the situation. Which one are you? This leads me to my third point, right? And I don't want to spend too much time on the introvert extrovert, but what I will say, if you're unsure where you fall on that trajectory, let me encourage you to take the Myers-Briggs assessment to find out where you fall in that trajectory, because it could explain a lot about who you are as a person. It could explain a lot about your miscalculations. Some of you who are extroverts may think that you are in a parent mode or adult mode when it comes to fundraising, when in reality your extroversion may be blinding you to the truth of your organization. Vice versa. Some of you introverts are some introverts, they suppress their greatness and don't realize that you're more than a child. In fact, you may be a full-blown, full-grown, functioning adult, and in many cases, a parent in certain contexts. But because of your introversion, you have a misassessment, a miscalculation. You don't understand how people truly view you. And vice versa. These things can be mixed and matched, right? But it's important for you as an individual and as an organization to understand who you are and put that into context of your role. And here's the third point. When it comes to the psychodynamic elements of fundraising, regardless of who you are, you must sell at all times through the lens of your personality. Regardless of who you are and who you are not, you are responsible for selling who you are, who your organization is, what your program is, what you're doing, what you're about. You must sell at all times, 100% of the time. But here's the linchpin. You must sell through the lens of your personality. Remember the conversation about introvert, extrovert, tweener. Sell from that perspective. Be clear about who you are. Know yourself. I'm an introvert, so I sell from an introvert's perspective, and I have introvert tendencies and traits. I'm an extrovert. I have extrovert tendencies and traits. I'm a tweener. Okay, given where we are with the coronavirus, things can be very interesting when it comes to sales. Think about this. Pre-corona, you would hear a lot about extroverts. Extroverted behavior is key to sales when it comes to fundraising and pitching your organization, meaning being a people person, meaning being outgoing in your exchanges with people, particularly funders, meaning being at events. And there are memes all over social media that says with the quarantine, everybody's forced to live the introvert lifestyle, and some people are saying I've been living that lifestyle because I don't like to go outside. I like to be by myself, right? The quarantine has forced all of us inside. And what I'm finding is that many people who are extroverted are struggling to present themselves as extroverts through technology and video conferencing. It's really interesting because they must feel the energy. They must feel the effervescence of other people in the room in order to be themselves. They feed off of that. They need it. And it's hard to gauge some of that, so they say, through video technology. For a season, We don't know how long this season's going to last with the quarantine. Before season, introverts and extroverts are on the same playing field. We're all inside. And what has to be found out is, how do we still sell through the lens of our extroversion or introversion? And many of us are going to have to learn how to do it differently. Perhaps it is through video conferencing. Perhaps it is through better email marketing and messaging. Perhaps it's through more strategic social media placements and ad placements. Perhaps it's through references and referrals, etc. There's going to be a mixed match of strategies that are typically used or not used by a personality type during this moment. And what's going to happen is that as the pandemic subsides, quarantine gets lifted, some of these strategies that have been mixed matched during this moment are going to become new normals. And extroverts are going to have to use a mixed match of extroversion and introversion strategies, and introverts are going to do the same. All right? So now you have to reset what it means to sell from the lens of your personality preference. All right? If you're an extrovert, you got to figure out how to be an extrovert via introvert tools, whether it's texts, emails, ads. Okay? Maybe you already got comfortable with the video function, right? You're all over video chatting, etc. But introvert techniques may include non-video version marketing strategies. And you're going to have to master what it means to develop sales copy without you saying a word, but it's written down. What it means to put together an ad placement about your program and telling a story without you being front and center, without you being the center of attention. And for introverts, maybe you've mastered what it means to create great sales copy, great newsletters, great Facebook social media ads. But now you're going to have to sprinkle in putting your face on camera. You're going to have to figure out how to block out people visually while still being visualized by your audience. This is going to be so interesting. And the tweeners probably in a better spot because they know how to flip-flop between the two and can go either way. But this pandemic is creating an interesting situation for all types of personalities, because now we still have to sell and market what we do to funders and let funders know how we are evolving and shifting in the midst of this pandemic. And we're going to have to do it in a variety of ways, but we can't do it through face-to-face meetings. We got to do it through video chat. We got to do it through strong emails that capture our story, good social media marketing, and other means that we can get our hands on. But you got to sell through your lens. Now here's number 4. When it comes to the psychodynamic of fundraising, number 1, we talked about you got to know your role. Number 2, know yourself. Number 3, sell at all times through the lens of your personality. Number 4 is the last point. Leverage other outlets to sell for you that may not fit with your personality. Now, you may say, I'm an introvert, but you're going to need some extrovert strategies, pre-corona, current through corona, and after corona. So you're going to have extrovert elements to your sales approach. Extroverts may say, I must be in the room. I must feel the energy of the funder. I must be able to tell what's going on. I gotta get out. I gotta get out. Well, you're going to have to leverage introvert strategies to sell. Remember, point 3 was to sell from your personality. You want to be clear about what you can do, what you're capable of doing. But in doing so, you must also counterbalance what you are not. That means that if you're extrovert, you got to have introverts also on your team. If you're introvert, you got to have extroverts on your team. If you're a tweener, you can flip-flop between the two and go either way. How do you do that, Doc? Okay, great. Glad you asked. Right? If you are not an extrovert, you're going to need partners, staff, and customer referrals who are extroverted enough who can sell for you to other funders or partners. You need extroverted partners who are going to talk about you, who are going to be bold about you. You're going to need extroverted staff who are going to tell your story, even though you physically and mentally can't do it. You're going to need customer referrals. You're going to need funders referring you to other funders because you get stuck in that extroverted world and you prefer to be by yourself. If you're an extrovert, you need introverted partners who know how to communicate to other introverts, who can use introverted strategies and tactics to communicate the message. You need staff who are the opposite of you, who can pull it back a bit, who knows how to change up the game a little bit, and who can be the opposite of you in this critical moment. And you're gonna need customers who are introverted, who know how to talk to other introverts and say, "Hey, you know what? I know, I know they're a bit loud. I know they're a little extra, but listen, they're really good at what they do. I mean, I've had to say very little to them, and it's almost like they read my mind. This is an introvert talking. It's almost like they read my mind, and they know how to come through in the clutch. They love their customers. They love our community. They never miss a report. They never over or underspend. They're an on point partner. You might want to consider giving them a call. They're a little loud, but once you get past that, they're great. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Like you need the opposite partners, opposite staff members, opposite customer referrals working for you to sell your nonprofit. The psychodynamics of fundraising. Wow. Some of this, as I said, man, a lot of this comes from the world of psychology, and a lot of psychology has been influential in the development of leadership studies, which is where I spent a lot of my academic time and professional time. And I've learned about these strategies from a leadership standpoint and how these strategies influence organizational growth and organizational behavior. And yes, it influences fundraising behaviors as well. And so I'm encouraging you to play this podcast back, play this web class back, and to digest some of these elements and then to dig deeper into each of these elements so that you can figure out, okay, I think we're on this plane, but let me take this assessment to see. I think we're in this category, but let me take this assessment to check. And what you'll notice when you start to take these assessments is that perhaps over the years, you may have been miscalculating, misjudging your hand, overplaying your hand, underplaying your hand because you didn't know your role and you didn't know yourself and you weren't selling according to your personality and you didn't engage the right partners to sell in a way that you're not comfortable. I really do hope this helps. I hope this continues to push you and position you to fundraise in these critical times. And I believe that as you spend more time with this stuff, it will make a unique difference in the world of fundraising for your organization. With that said, I am Dr. William Clark. I'm your host for the Dr. William Clark podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.